Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon, A Practical Path to Net Zero for Supply Chain Companies. I can see that lots of people are joining, so I think that we will kick off. Do you want to move to the next slide, please? I am Rachel Hunter. I'm the Director of Marketing at Optimised, and I am just going to run you through a quick introduction at the beginning of our webinar. We have some really interesting insights to share with you today about net zero, why now, and the drivers for net zero. And then we've got a fantastic panel discussion about driving value through decarbonisation. We also will have time for questions at the end of the session. So if you would like to ask any of the speakers any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box, and we'll come to them at the end. Want to move on to the next slide, please? Right, I'm going to introduce to you our wonderful speakers today. So first up is Carla Wilson. Carla is the director of the consulting team here at Optimised. She has a lot of experience working across lots of different industries with clients, helping them to look at their energy transition and to comply with legislation, but also to set their net zero pathways. And she manages the team here at Optimised. Next up is Charlie. Charlie is a senior sustainability consultant, and he leads the net zero advisory team at Optimised. He is going to be presenting the panel discussion with our special guest today, Gary Roberts, who is the managing director of Midlands Aerospace. Midlands Aerospace recently, I think this week, have announced that they've achieved the King's Award for Enterprise for 2025, which is a fantastic and prestigious award. So congratulations, Gary. Midlands Aerospace supplies the aerospace industry with high integrity manufactured solutions. And Gary is going to be talking to us about how the company has set a net zero pathway in response to demands from stakeholders. Move on to our next slide. I'm just going to give you a very brief introduction to Optimised for those of you who don't know us or who are perhaps new to Optimised. Optimised is helps organisations take control of their energy performance, helping reduce costs, but also build resilience for a low carbon future. We work with clients in partnership on a range of energy and sustainability challenges, really helping them to find solutions that deliver efficiencies and ROI. If we just kind of look at our service offering here on the right, that spans three areas. The first is net zero, the next is utility management, and the third is building optimization. Quite a unique proposition in the market. And here on the left-hand side, we have some of the stats across the business, and just to kind of pull a few out, 4,500 buildings and assets under management. We are now 170 employees, and we are helping our clients to save an average of 30,000 tonnes of carbon every year. We're also a certified B Corp, so we take our own commitment to net zero very seriously, and we have lots of information about that on our website in our B Impact report. I am going to move on to the interesting part of the webinar now and hand over to Carla. I hope you enjoy the presentations. Please put your questions in the chat, and we'll come back to them at the end. Over to you, Carla.
Thank you, Rachel, and welcome everyone this afternoon. So Sam, next slide, please. Thank you. So many of you will be familiar with the terminology such as climate change, greenhouse gases, carbon emissions, and more recently, net zero. But what exactly is net zero? So according to the IPCC, net zero is the point at which human-caused CO2 emissions are balanced globally by human-caused removals over a specific period. So here at Optimised, we are tackling that climate emergency head on. It's our #1 priority. The world is in a moment of crisis, with reports stating that we must limit the increase of global temperatures to well below 2 degrees, preferably under 1.5 degrees, above pre-industrial levels, to reduce climate-related consequences. Now, we've all witnessed or experienced this in one form or another, things such as temperature extremes, heavy rainfalls, ongoing periods of drought, all of which impact our health, food security, water supply, livelihoods, economic growth, etc. So to meet these targets, we know that global CO2 emissions need to fall by around 45% from 2010 levels by 2030 and reach net zero emissions by 2050. Now, many of you will be aware that the UK has legally committed to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by 78% by 2035 and reducing net zero by 2050. And we can see visible signs of that already, things such as the transition to renewable energy, the increase in wind turbines, solar farms, etc., and also around increasing carbon policy to ensure that organisations and individuals are reducing their emissions. So next slide, please. Thank you. So why is it important for your business? So we appreciate that organisations operate in different models with priorities, ESG commitments, and economic resilience all being of a different scale. However, underpinning that, we know there is increasing pressure from external stakeholders, such as shareholders or investors, customers, and the supply chain, to ensure that climate commitments are in place. Now, legislation is one of the biggest drivers for business, including mandatory and voluntary reporting schemes and decarbonisation targets, all of which can impact your operational strategies. Ultimately, economic resilience by decarbonising through demand reduction or investing in renewable or low carbon technologies, we know can cut costs and reduce your emissions to ensure sustainable operations. Next slide, please. So if we, as we're aware, we know businesses are becoming more aware of the climate change risks from physical events, economy, policy, capital markets. It's important that you as an organisation are willing to take on the change in order to transition to a low carbon future. Now, operational risks to costs, especially in volatile energy markets, is something that most of you, I'm sure, have been impacted by and that you can relate to. So we now want to explore customers accepting more environmentally conscious strategies, and we also know that our consumers are also looking for companies who are adopting more environmentally conscious strategies. An example of that, is a hotel chain that a customer may look at a more greener hotel with sustainability policies and green credentials in place, as opposed to one that isn't perhaps portraying those types of strategy. And we also know that to keep up with the market, and to limit reputational damage, that we need you to keep up with these net zero strategies to remain ahead of the market and your competitors. And therefore, that's why we want you to ensure that you use this as an opportunity to help mitigate those risks, stay ahead of legislation, of the carbon regulations, etc., and also build resilience to the environmental impacts that we're going to be exposed to. Next slide, please. Okay, fantastic. So what are the benefits of net zero? Most of you will probably appreciate and be driven by reduced energy cost and exposure to the market of the fossil fuels. So we know through implementing renewable procurement strategies, reducing your demand and investing in green technologies, that you can mitigate risks and ultimately reduce your costs and associated emissions with the consumption of your energy. We know that investors and consumers, their confidence in your organisation is enhanced if you align with ESG protocol, and also you would have improved resilience against climate-related risks, such as freak weather patterns, physical risks, sort of damage to infrastructure, supply chain, etc., and also transitional risks such as market shifts as the market shifts to a lower carbon economy. And there's a really lovely quote on here, which I hope most of you will take away today and use as one of your drivers for your net zero, whether that be internal or external. And it's many UK firms could use decarbonisation as a spur to reduce their costs, increase their revenues, optimise their capital structure, or all three. And that's where we can really support you in achieving that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So how is net zero achieved? Oh, sorry. Who is working towards net zero? So we just put an example here of some of our clients who are either at the beginning of their journey with us in developing a net zero pathway, or have been on it for a number of years now and are looking to reduce their emissions. So most of you will be familiar with some of these names. It's from a mix of sectors here. So we've got commercial real estate, we've got manufacturing, and we have hospitality. And all of these organisations are using various services across Optimised through different stakeholders within their organisation. But all of them are on that same path, albeit in different manners, but to reach their own net zero goals. Next slide, please. Thank you. So it's important that we understand how net zero is achieved, and ultimately to reach net zero, we need to reduce scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions to zero or a residual level. And then once we get to that target date, we have to neutralise any residual emissions that are left through carbon removals. So what we've given here is an example of best practice for net zero pathways. And I won't read them one by one, but most of you, again, will be familiar with some of these concepts. But we really believe that the insight into your leadership team, the buy-in from them is one of the fundamental points of your net zero pathway to ensure that it has momentum, budget, and also a realistic time frame to be implemented. We know that you need robust systems and data. Again, I'm sure many of you can resonate with that is one of the pain points, maybe of your role or of your team's role in understanding where you get data from, especially across the scope 3 area. I know that is a big challenge for people. And we want to ensure that you actually have a tangible action plan. So, not just an idea. We want to make sure that you can actually implement the opportunities and ensure that you meet your goals. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a typical net zero pathway. For those of you that haven't seen one of these before, this is taken from the SBTi as a source. And as expected, the timeline is across the bottom with your emissions going upwards. And what we can see here is that the abatement within the value chain is being reduced year on year on year. Now, the red path there shows us what the alignment is and the reduction that's required to align with that 1.5 degree temperature change. So this graphic here has 2050 as the latest date, but depending on when you set your organisational target for net zero, it could be a much shorter time frame, which would obviously have to have a more steeper impact. across all three scopes. Next slide, please. Thank you. And finally, for those of you that may not be familiar with our approach to how we support you with tackling net zero, we've developed a very simple 5-point plan, as we call it, which ensures that we have a well thought out, a tangible and a sustainable net zero pathway that you and your organisation can follow. So just very quickly, the first step of that always is to measure your emissions and create that baseline. So many people tend to choose a period after 2020 with the COVID, because that's obviously considered the new norm, as we like to continue in the changing world that we have. And what we ensure here is that you've got a baseline that covers all three areas of emissions, Scope 1, 2 and 3. What we then do is engage with your internal stakeholders to set targets and understand what that looks like for you as an organisation. We then have to develop a strategy, which is ultimately your pathway. So we look at how we can encourage your employees, your supply chain, your operations, your systems, everything that falls under that remit to support you in achieving net zero. And then we look at the reporting functions that you may have, whether that be through voluntary or mandatory carbon schemes, or whether it's internal benchmarking, competitive benchmarking, or your operational KPIs as well. And then finally, what we need to do is support you in the implementation of that. So it's not just reduction through Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, it's through renewable technologies, energy efficiency, etc. It's also supporting your Scope 3 areas in things such as your supply chains, your procurement policies, and some of your internal policies also. Now, it's important to understand from this graphic that you don't have to necessarily follow this order. You can enter this journey at any point, and as much as it would be lovely if everybody came in at point 1, we appreciate that your business may have other priorities, such as the reporting. The voluntary or mandatory reporting might be your first place that you start, and then we work through the other points in time to ensure that you have got that full strategy in place. That's everything from me. I hope that was clear and concise. I will now hand over to Gary and Charlie, who are going to give you a real life experience of developing a net zero strategy and what that means to Gary and his organisation. So over to you, Charlie.
Thanks, Carla. So really delighted to have Gary Roberts with us here today. I met Gary a couple of years ago now, and really great effort in terms of that King's Awards recognition as well. So it's great to hear. So just to kick us off then, just wondering, Gary, can you just give us a bit of an introduction to who Midlands Aerospace are and your role, as well as your kind of current relationship with Optimised?
Yeah, sure. Afternoon, everyone. My name's Gary. I'm the Managing Director of Midlands Aerospace. We are a Tier 1 supplier into Airbus and ST Engineering. For Airbus, we're focused on aftermarket spares, supplying detailed and elementary parts across all the platforms, predominantly supplying into Hamburg. And for ST, we're a major supplier of components and kits for their passenger to freight conversions. So if people don't know what that is, the old passenger aircraft get kitted out to become freighters. And we support, again, all the Airbus platforms for them conversions, supplying their global hubs. Now, Midlands Aerospace is 70% export, probably hence why we won the King's Award for International Trade. We employ around about 90 people. We operate from a modern purpose-built facility just outside Mansfield. We offer a comprehensive range of machining and fabrication activities. We have in-house surface treatments, a global customer base, and we just really supply into the commercial aerospace sector. I think one of the key important things for Midlands Aerospace is the supply chain demands. It's quite easy to make the product, supply the product, but the supply chain now demands much more. I mean, business ethics, environmental responsibility, cyber security. You know, within the supply chain ecosystem that we deal with, you have to make sure that you have the right strategies and the right approach. And from a net zero perspective, when we set off on this journey early 2023, Charlie, somewhere around about there.
Yeah, that's right.
That's when our relationship with Optimised started. I mean, from me, we needed an organisation that can support an SME. You know, we have 90 people, and I'm not some kind of net zero guru. I didn't know where to start, and I have to say, we chose Optimised for various reasons, but for their awareness, the guidance, and the support they give for the implementation for SMEs who want to start on that journey. So yeah, it's been good up till now, and we've got a net zero strategy, and we're working towards that. I've been quite lucky that from the support from Optimised, I've presented our net zero strategy in Toulouse to the Airbus team, to GKN, to explain what an SME can do. And I think we've all got to recognise, regardless of supply chains, you know, we've all got to play as part, and it can be done if you want to do it. And I think Optimised, you have helped us get on that journey. Obviously, there's another 20 years to go, but you know, we'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, yeah, in terms of, I guess, the stage at the moment, so thinking back to that five steps on the plan that Carla went through.
Yeah.
We've been through the measurement of your base year. We've been through the target setting, and that's setting targets that are aligned with 1.5 degrees, aligned with Science-Based Targets Initiative. And we've also done a fair amount of work on the strategy, thinking about what's needed in terms of initiatives, the cost of those initiatives, the impact they're going to have, and whether net zero is feasible. And then we're also working on the reporting. So I'd say we've made some good headway down, and we're kind of now looking a bit more at the implementation side of things, and you know, how do we actually put what's on paper into action?
Yeah, 100%. I think where we've got to is we understand what as carbon footprint is, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. We report in that, and we understand how to collect the data now, and what data and how you would like it presenting to support. And you know, we are in that, I would say, in simple terms, we're in the doing stage now. What do we have to do to reduce it? And it can be the support from you guys when we're looking at renewable energies or solar panels or engagement with the supply chain. So yeah, I think from the pathway shown, I think we've covered every step, and we're just in the implementation more rather than the understanding. Because unless you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going to get to, do you?
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, just going back then to the beginnings, Gary, of how this came about. Can you just run us through what were the key drivers for Midlands Aerospace to begin that net zero journey?
I'm quite open the supply chain. You know, we are a tier 1 supplier into Airbus. You're talking about 160 billion pound organisation, 12,500 suppliers globally. They've got a significant scope 1, scope 2 reduction targets to get to. And even though it isn't a directive within the supply chain, they expect their suppliers to get on this journey as well. I mean, they're looking to reduce 63% by 2030 of scope 1 and scope 2. So there's some significant things that they have to do, and then scope 3, 46%. So, you mentioned about, it can increase your revenue, and I'm not going to lie, we need to do it, but to be at the forefront of a major OEM puts you in a driving position to be considered for new work, to be considered for new contracts, and you're also doing the right thing for the environment. So to me, it made sense on both accounts. So yeah, why embark on this? As customers wanted it, just the same as the hotel chain, just the same as investment. There's certain banks now that will only deal with people who have some really robust green credentials. So yeah, customers, supply chain, market demand.
Yeah. I just add a point to there. I was reading an article from McKinsey, in fact, recently that was talking about the opportunity for UK companies on the sort of green revolution. We're ultimately going to be a massive exporter of green products or low carbon products. McKinsey put a figure of 1 trillion in extra value by 2030. So, and it's particularly the sort of manufacturing sectors, I guess, such as Midlands Aerospace, that can really capitalize on that.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, just further on the drivers then, Gary, can you give us a bit of a picture of who's responsible for the net zero strategy at Midland, and what other stakeholders are important in terms of those initial drivers for the net zero journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think Carla mentioned it to begin with. You've got to have buy-in from the top. I mean, I'm the managing director. The buy-in is from me. You've got to have buy-in from your SMT, who have to make changes to how we work. But I think one of the good things that Optimised provided was a really good overview and training to the SMT, to me, of the reasons why and the potential benefits to get that buy-in. So yeah, I mean, we're 90 people. I mean, the trajectory for Midlands Aerospace is to double our turnover to 30 million in the next 4 years. At some stage on that trajectory, there will be a dedicated number of resources dealing with net zero. That's without a shadow of a doubt. But the driving force is the management team, is the leadership team, and I've been quite lucky because we're part of a group, and the investor as well have all bought into this to drive it forward. Because there is a cost, let's not beat about the bush. There is a cost, but there's also benefits, and that's one of the major things. You can employ 10 people, or we could work with you guys and streamline as processes in a more cohesive manner to deliver the same results. So yeah, the driver's me. Ultimately, the driver is our customers. That's it. We are just picking up on what our customers need, what the supply chain needs. So yeah, you either drive it through, but change is never easy, and you need that buy-in, and you need the people around you to understand it. 3 years ago, we didn't understand it, and I'll be quite clear. I didn't know what scope 1, scope 2 what. It mean nothing. But you guys sorted that out. So yeah, the driver's me. Well, the driver's the business, the market. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think this is what we see a lot with clients is there's a whole kind of domino effect from the supply chain, and a real push from clients and customers to raise the bar on net zero. But we've got, I think we've got three questions in total. So just moving on to the second question then. What challenges did Midland Aerospace face in building a credible net zero strategy?
3 years ago, I mean, I've said it, 3 years ago, where do we start? And we're quite open to, when I presented our net zero to Airbus, you know, where does a team of 90 people start? Our focus is manufacturing. Our focus is to deliver products to our customers, you know, and we didn't know where to start. I mean, we had a plan. I had an idea. This is what we needed to do, but the customer wanted it. Where do we start? And again, you know, that's where you guys came in to build that credible net zero strategy. Yeah, you don't know our business, but you can guide us, and that's what you did. You know, we put you provided us the structure, and we put the meat on it. If I'm perfectly honest, so yeah, it was challenging. The biggest challenge was, who do you go to? What do you do? You know, that's the be all and end all of it. Once you've set off on it, it gets easier. You know, the data collection to find out where you are, again, is another big challenge. You know, if you know, we're quite lucky. You know, we're ERP driven, but even having an ERP system, you know, understanding how to get the carbon input from a kilogram of aluminium that we use, or the transport, you know, upstream, downstream. You guys helped us understand that. We had the information, but how do you present it? So yeah, I think to get to where we are now, there's been a lot of hard work, but there's been a lot of guidance as well from you guys, and it is appreciated. I'm not just saying that because there's 40, 50 people on. I'd say it anyhow. You know, we would, without doing what we've doing, we would not be doubling our turnover in the next 3-4 years. And I think he's quite clear on that. And we haven't even, and to be fair, we haven't even started really. You know, the next challenge that we have is, they're not the scope 1 and scope 2, because I think the scope 1 and scope 2 are more in our control. You know, we can, you know, we've got as green energy that we can look at on the roof. We've had all them surveys. We're buying in by 2026, 100% green energy. Internally, we can look at that. We can get electric vehicles. The biggest thing is the supply chain. And how do we engage with the supply chain? Larger suppliers are good. Larger suppliers will already have their net zero strategy. It's the smaller SMEs than us, where you know, we work with businesses of 20, 30 people, a couple of £1 million turnover, but they impact our net zero strategy. And it's how do I educate my team to educate them to enlist in and go down the net zero strategy route. So yeah, it's work in progress. There's still lots that we will collaborate on, I have no doubt. Right across scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. So yeah, I think there's still challenges, but we do have a credible net zero strategy. You know, we do report, but that's the only starting point. You know, if everyone just wants to go and do, I'm doing reporting, but not actually do anything else, well, you haven't really got a net zero strategy.
Yeah, no, I think certainly I can, in your point on the data collection and the supply chain, if I remember correctly, the big portions of your scope 3 emissions were in purchased goods and services, upstream transport and distribution, downstream transportation and distribution, which are notoriously difficult parts of the supply chain to measure. And as you say, I think some of the larger suppliers that were making up that purchased goods and services and upstream transportation were a little bit, perhaps, shall we say, easier to get engagement from, but there were definitely more challenges, I'd say, with the smaller with the smaller suppliers.
Yeah.
And I think we spoke. We also spoke about, the carrot versus the stick. How do you engage the supply chain? And thankful to say, Gary, that you went with the carrot. So to try and encourage your supply chain to line up, to send, communicate the vision and to get them to line up on those science-based targets. So I think that was really effective as well.
Yeah, I totally agree, Charlie. It was. There's still more to be done. I mean, yeah, as downstream transportation, I think accounted for, it was a lot of carbon, and when you're flying parts all around the world,
41%.
41%. Yeah. I mean, and I think I said at the time, it's very difficult for Midland Aerospace to go back to ST Engineering at 30-40 billion pound turnover and go, I'd really like you now to start using a boat, and I'd really like you to start ordering instead of 3 months lead time, 6 months lead time, to reduce your carbon. But actually, we've had engagement. They are starting to use sea freight instead of air freight. So even sometimes significantly larger multinationals and the Midland Aerospace take on board what you're saying. So yeah, we've had some success, but again, there's more work to be done. It's work in progress, and Optimised will be a partner in that. There's much more that we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I guess with that, if we just move to the final question then, which is, what impact has the net zero strategy had, and what's next? So I'd be interested to get your thoughts, Gary, a little bit more around feedback from your customers. I think you mentioned a couple of big clients at the beginning, but in terms of their feedback on the work done so far.
I think I mentioned that presenting, but I mean presenting is just anybody can present and waffle. I think that the reality is Airbus themselves have 12,500 suppliers. They get delivered 2.5 million parts every day. Midland Aerospace are in the top 35% of the EcoVadis within that ecosystem. So again, sometimes you look back and go, we're 90 people now. We're at the top 35% out of 12,500 suppliers, and within that there are some significantly bigger people than we are. Why does that matter? Well, it matters when you sit down with your clients and go, oh, you're doing the right things, whether it's net zero. We want to engage with you because you have the same ethics, the same ethos. You are driving forward what they want. We're also we have to do CDP reporting for another customer. As an SME, we are ranked got the highest marks that you can for SME right across. So again, it provides confidence to your customers. And I think confidence in this day and age is a big thing. Can you deliver? Oh yeah, you can deliver, but can you deliver the requirements of the supply chain? I've talked about the net zero strategy. Then there's obviously the cybersecurity and everything else. So our standing within Airbus and within ST Engineering and other clients as well has increased. And it's not just talk, it's factual. You can demonstrate it. This is something you can show. We do the reporting. We don't have to do the reporting. We're a 15 million turnover, so we don't have to do it, but we do it to demonstrate where we are. So I think for me, the feedback from customers is positive. And again, it's when I, from the opening line, there's nothing wrong with everybody being honest and saying we're in business to make money, but we're in business to do it the right way and to have the same level of collaboration across the entire supply chain to reduce carbon, to improve security, to deliver the parts. So yeah, we are the feedback is tremendous. there's always more that can be done. And I see this journey that we've embarked on is to make a difference for Midlands Aerospace, to make a difference for the environment, but ultimately to grow the business. And I think that's one of the things. But there is a cost, but the cost is insignificant compared to the potentials of doing the right things. And so far, all the feedback is positive. That's what we wanted. You listen to your customers, listen to your clients, listen to where you are, deliver the strategy, put it in place, demonstrate you're doing it, get the rewards. So yeah, I think it's had a major positive impact.
Yeah. Right. Well, thanks very much, Gary. And I think, yeah, we're really looking forward to continuing on this journey with you through that implementation phase, putting some of these actions in place. I think that's where it really becomes exciting. We start to make that real impact. Yeah, it's been great to have you on as well, talking through all that in such great detail. So thank you very much for that.
No, you're welcome. I mean, like I said to everybody listening, it's just my experience. And it's true, and it's demonstrated, and it's reported. So there's no fiction. It's just actual what we've done, where we've been, and what we can demonstrate. So yeah, it's been really good. Thank you for inviting me.
Rachel, shall I hand over to you for the Q&A?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Charlie. Well, thank you so much, Gary, Carla, and Charlie, for all of your insights there. Really super interesting, Gary. You've provided some fascinating insight and background into the net zero journey for Midlands Aerospace, and it sounds like it's been a real journey these past 3 years. It's really great to hear about the drivers behind this activity being your customers and the market, and the opportunities that you're already finding off the back of that, of the work you've already done. It's really, really interesting, and also that you feel that your net zero journey is vital to your continued business success. I think what I've kind of taken away from your comments today is that I think you've perfectly defined the business benefits of net zero to Midlands Aerospace, and I hope that others joining the call have grasped that as well, and kind of how going on this journey has provided many layers of benefit to the business, and will continue to do so. So yeah, sincere thanks for joining us and telling us a little bit about where you've got to. There are a couple of questions for us to go through in the chat. So the first one is actually directed at you, Gary, but perhaps it might be better, you can answer it if you want to, but it might be a more general question and one for Charlie to pick up. Any advice on how to begin quantifying Scope 3 emissions in logistics and distribution?
Speak to Optimised. No, I'm joking. Charlie, you are better to answer this, because let's be honest, you understand the formulas, and we provided you all the data, the weights, the transport, the locations, but you've got all the formulas to work out the carbon emissions from that. So I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, sure. So there's definitely a few approaches you can take to beginning with measuring emissions from transport and distribution. At the kind of basic level, that you can use spend-based factors. So based on your spend with logistics suppliers, you can make a industry average estimation for those emissions. With Midland, we took that a level further. We wanted to get a more accurate read, particularly because it was such a large portion of the Scope 3 emissions. So we look to collect activity data on the logistics. So we were looking to collect mileage of transport routes from the source of where the goods were manufactured to the point at Midlands Aerospace where they were taken in. And for this, we needed to set up a data collection template and surveys that would then go out to those logistics suppliers and collect as much information as we could. But a lot can be done, I think, also with, where there are gaps with using technology to make informed estimates around those distances, as well as the, we made some also estimates around the weights of certain goods and things like that. So there's a lot of it does come down to what the data availability is and what you can get in the first instance. And the most important thing is to make sure that you've got an action plan and roadmap to improve and enhance that accuracy throughout your reporting period.
I think the method of transport was critical to us on it, Charlie. We air freight compared to sea freight. We're a global supply chain, 70% export. We're not sending it down the road. So I think the support that you gave with regards to the differences in between the different methods of transport were crucial to working out a more accurate emissions scope 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we had a whole different array there of transport types coming from, as you say, air freight, sea cargo, road transportation. So and each one will require its own approach. But I believe that we've got a really accurate measurement for that transport and distribution, and a good platform from which to really draw improvement. If you've got more granular data, you've got a better chance of being able to see where the issues are, where the hotspots are, and where you can make improvements or decarbonisation.
Great, thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Gary. I've got another question for you, Gary. It's about it's about customer engagement. How long did it take to get engagement from customers? We've developed a program to measure the carbon produced when we dull polish stainless steel over 3 years ago, and none of our customers, some of them blue chip, seem to care. How long did it take you to get engagement from your customers?
I think the lucky thing for me was the customers were already engaged and demanding their supply chain engage, if that sounds right. We didn't have to go knocking on the door to go, look, we've got a net zero strategy. And I think it depends which market sectors you're in, and that's my honest assessment. The aerospace industry has significant challenges with emissions. Everybody knows about what they're doing with new planes and reducing the carbon while we're flying around. And to be fair, the actual manufacturing of a plane is around about 3% of the total carbon emitted over the lifespan of a plane. I was lucky. The customers and the OEMs wanted this, and they wanted it throughout their entire supply chain. My only advice would be, it's what are the benefits that the customer would be getting, because at the end of the day, it will filter through to every supply chain, every sector. Just at the moment, there's focus on aerospace because we all get on planes and we all emit quite a lot of carbon. And if you're in that sector, there's a big drive, but it will filter out right across the supply chains. Every business, blue chip, will be doing something when the benefit comes out. So I think it's knocking on doors and saying, these are the benefits. This is what we are doing for you. We're reducing our emissions. We're reducing our environmental impact. Why don't you use us more? Because that's the benefit. Yeah, we will. I won't say lucky, but our supply chain, that the ecosystem that we sit in, demands it.
I think just to add to that, Gary, I think it's really important of who you're speaking to in your customer base. So if you're requesting information from them or trying to tell them what the advantage is, it's really important, again, to make sure you're engaging with the right contact within that organisation as well.
Yeah, well, 100%. I agree. I mean, again, it's finding the right people. I've sat down, you know, to be fair to Airbus, they've got a bank of environmental net zero strategy. You know, I've sat down with quite a few of them to understand. But yeah, you getting the right key decision makers who are responsible for it, because sometimes it won't be purchasing.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, purchasing just want the part. They're not interested. And it's the next level up or the sideways where you go, these are the benefits. And, you know, it's sometimes the supply chain isn't just about the part anymore. So, yeah, it will filter out.
Okay, thank you, Gary. And then just one last question. I mean, we touched on right at the beginning in Carla's presentation the importance of senior leadership oversight. What's typically needed? What kind of engagement is typically needed from senior leadership to embed net zero goals across an organisation? I'm going to direct this one to you, Carla, or to Charlie. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly as you said, Rachel, it's about having the right people engaged from the beginning so that we're speaking to the decision makers that can actually influence the change. So, you know, we know many manufacturing organisations do things because they've always done them like that. And business as usual isn't going to get us to net zero. So we need to make sure that we're challenging those scenarios through the right people within the organisation. So there will be some time burdens, perhaps, you know, on finance departments, procurement departments for data requests, workshops, discussions. But the more engaged a stakeholder team is, the more successful a net zero strategy is going to be. So again, for the success of it, it's really important that it's not just owned by one person. It's got to become the ethos of the company to ensure that every bit of it filters through the whole organisation to ensure its success, really.
Yeah, and presumably you want to map that out at the beginning of the process and engagement.
Very first point is a stakeholder workshop. With everybody to say why we're there and what we're doing. I'm sure you can remember that, Gary.
Yeah. And we did. Yeah, you've got to. It's a team effort.
It is, absolutely.
But like I think, like you said, I mean, I'm the decision maker. I wanted to do it, so it's quite easy. But I can't do it on my own. Everybody's got to be engaged.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we will wrap up there. Thank you everyone for joining us and listening. I hope you found it as useful as I did. Super valuable insight. Thank you so much, Gary, for joining us and talking through your experience. We really appreciate you sharing it. And thank you, Charlie and Carla, for presenting as well. The recording will be available and we will share it later on this week. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.